Hello YouTube and welcome to the next route learning video. This is a video I've been promising for a little while, but unfortunately it's taken some time to be able to get round to it and record it, but I'm glad that I've finally been able to put this video together. So on today's video we're going to be taking train 1V60, which is the 8:20 Aberdeen to Penzance service, which I believe is the longest service on the British Railway network, and we're going to be taking this from Dundee through to Edinburgh Waverley on the Scottish East Coast Main Line route. On the way we're going to be calling at Leuchars, Cupar, Ladybank, Markinch, Kirkcaldy, Inverkeithing, Haymarket and finally Edinburgh Waverley, which is a distance of just under 60 miles. Our attraction for the journey is a Class 221 Super Voyager operated by cross-country trains. The Class 221 has been in service since 2002 and was constructed between 2001 and 2002 by Bombardier Transportation, with a total of 44 of these train sets built in a formation of 4 or 5 coaches per train, though usually 5 coaches. What sets this particular train apart from the standard Class 220 Voyager is the fact that this one can tilt on curves to enable it to take curves at a higher speed, whereas the Class 220 Voyager cannot. The maximum speed of this train is 125 miles per hour, though there's no way we'll be able to get to anything near that on this journey. And the total weight of each train is 227 tonnes, with a power output of 750 horsepower per coach. Once in the cab of the Voyager, the first thing that we need to do is put in the master key, which you can see over here by the combined traction and brake controller. So now I'm going to put that in, and then we need to remove the reversing handle into the neutral position. I've now reset the AWS self-test sequence, and now when I move it into the forward position, the driver safety device test sequence should begin. So you can hear that the driver safety device went off there, and I just press Q to reset it. The headlights are already set up in the correct configuration, as you probably noticed. As the signal ahead is displaying a green aspect, I am going to turn off the driver reminder appliance, as we will be cleared to depart straight away. The next thing I'm going to do now is run the NRN radio self-test sequence.
Hello, Central Rivers, Ops Control, just testing an NRN. Are you receiving me loud and clear, over?
Yeah, receiving Central Rivers, yeah, loud and clear, over.
Thank you very much, over out.
Sorry, what's that?
Now that we've done the radio test, there's not actually a lot more that we need to do, as the train is pretty much set up to start. One other thing I'm going to do is turn on the instrument lighting, just so the instruments are lit up, especially when we go through tunnels. And now that we've looked at that, just to show you just here, we've got down here a percentage gauge showing how hard the brakes are applied, and that's the main gauge we're going to use to judge how hard we're braking on this journey. Above that we have the speedometer, which is pretty self-explanatory, and then over here we have the brake cylinder pressure gauge, which is the needle on the right of the two needles on this gauge, though I generally use the percent gauge in this train more than I would use the brake cylinder pressure gauge. Departing from Dundee, the starting speed limit is 40 miles per hour, though it is quickly going down to 25 miles per hour, and we've got just under 8 3/4 miles to go to our first stop, which is Leuchars. I may pronounce some of these place names wrong. I have taken advice from a couple of Scottish people with help with these pronunciations, but I still get the feeling I might get one or two wrong. So immediately departing Dundee just here, we are on a steep uphill gradient of 1 in 48 just for a moment, so I've got to apply a bit of extra power to try and maintain speed. I'm aiming to not accelerate above 25 miles per hour, as I see very little point just here, as the speed limit will be dropping to 25 miles per hour on this point just coming up where we turn left onto the Tay Bridge. So as you can see, the speed limit has now dropped to 25 miles per hour. The line leaving on the right there is the line through to Perth and ultimately Glasgow. I have covered that route in the other direction from Perth to Dundee in a previous video. So we're now starting to climb up towards the Tay Bridge on a 1 in 53 uphill gradient, so I've got to apply a bit of extra power to try and ensure that we don't lose speed. As we round the left-hand curve coming up, a bit further around the curve, the gradient will then level out. And once the track has straightened out, we will then be on a straight section all of the way to the other end of the Tay Bridge. One of the problems with driving the Voyager is that I can't actually see the power handles, so I can't see what position it's in, and there's no gauge in the cab that shows me how much power I've got applied, so I've sort of got to try and guess what position the power handle is in and work out from there how to respond to changing gradients and speeds. Now that we're on a level gradient, I have just idled the power and I'm allowing the train just to coast along here. We shouldn't lose too much speed, and obviously we won't gain any speed with no power. One thing it is important to note is just on the left in the water there you can see what appears to be stones or rocks. They're actually pillars from the previous Tay Bridge, which used to be on this site. And I think it's very poignant to remember a terrible tragedy which happened here on the night of the 28th of December 1879. A storm hit this area with wind speeds up to 70 miles per hour and possibly up to 80, and unfortunately due to a design flaw in the old bridge it collapsed and a train actually went into the water, killing pretty much everything on board. There were 60 confirmed deaths with 75 suspected. So we're currently travelling over the new Tay Bridge. The speed limit here is going up to 35 miles per hour just as we enter this girded area here. Once we're halfway along the second girder, I will then apply power. So this is the end of the first girder here, and as you can see we're now about halfway along the second, so I'm going to increase the power to bring us up to 35 miles per hour. Now that we've reached 35 miles per hour, I've once again idled the power to allow the train to coast along here. Again, we shouldn't lose too much speed, and the speed limit will remain at 35 miles per hour until we've reached the end of the bridge, where the speed limit will then be quickly going up to 65 miles per hour. I'd just like to remind you that after this video, the next video I plan on making is on the Newcastle to Edinburgh route between Edinburgh and North Berwick in a ScotRail Class 380. And then after that, the two videos that I'm aiming to really focus on will be Peterborough to York in a Deltic, and finally the question and answer video, which I know I've been promising for a while. The reason why I've delayed that is because I've been waiting for enough questions to come in to really make the video worthwhile, and I think I'm almost there now. But of course you can still ask me any more questions you'd like to. up until the point I decide to record that video. The speed limit here is now going up to 65 miles per hour, and I believe that the tilt is now authorised. You can see a yellow light in the cab that says tilt authorised, so the train will start tilting on the curves. And we can accelerate up to the new 65 speed limit as we pass the rear of the signal for the opposite track. One of the things you will notice as I drive along here is that unfortunately this route does not have super elevation, so when you go around curves they often look sharper than perhaps they should do because of the lack of super elevation. If you're in a non-tilting train, it really does appear to throw you out. Unfortunately, the tilt doesn't always keep up with what the train's doing, and you can end up leaning the wrong way as you enter a new curve, say after an S-bend or something, which I'll try and point out if it happens. As we're now approaching 60 miles per hour, I'm just going to reduce the power momentarily, and now as you can see the speed limit is going up to 75 miles per hour. We're shortly going to be going downhill on a gradient of 1 in 96, and in fact you can see the start of the downhill section here, so I'm just reducing the power now just to allow the train to coast up towards the speed limit. The gradient will be shallowing just here to down at 1 in 221, so I am going to apply a little bit of power to try and bring our speed up towards 75 miles per hour. I have just idled the power and applied light braking as I felt we were actually increasing speed a bit too much, and I wanted to ensure that we didn't break the speed limit. And now we've slowed down a bit, I'm just going to release the brakes and see what happens. We're now passing Linkswood sidings on the left, which means we've got around 3.5 miles to go now to our first stop. And now it looks like we've just lost a little bit too much speed, so I'm going to increase some power now. We're actually now going up on a grade of 1 in 93 temporarily, so I'm just increasing the power once again. As you can see, we just dropped below 70 there. I do actually wish this train had cruise control. It would certainly make life easier when driving, particularly along this route where there's quite a variety of gradient and speed limit changes as well. In a short distance the gradient will be changing once again, and we're going to start going downhill as steep as 1 in 48. What we're actually looking for as a landmark that we're approaching our first stop is a Morpeth board warning for an upcoming 55 mile per hour speed restriction, and once we see that, we're half a mile from the speed limit itself and around 3/4 of a mile from the stop. Due to the fact that it is on a downhill grade, I will have to use some braking quite a bit earlier than usual to ensure that we can slow down in time. So we are now starting to go downhill, and I'm just cutting the power to try and ensure we don't gain too much speed. And very shortly we should be seeing the 55 mile per hour warning board. We have just taken a significant drop in the gradient as we're starting to go downhill quite steeply, and at this point we're dropping to an even steeper downhill gradient. So here is the warning board for the 55 restriction which I mentioned. So I'm now braking up to 40 on the percent gauge. One thing you will notice is that as we get to below 60 miles per hour, the needle on the percent gauge will actually jump quite significantly. I'm not entirely sure what that's about, but it means we can actually brake harder when we're doing below 60. So now that needle has taken a jump, I've just reduced the braking back down a bit to try and ensure that we don't stop too quickly. As you can see, I have been adjusting the brake there. We are now down to 30 on the percent gauge. I want to aim to enter the platform at no faster than around 25 miles per hour. The stopping point here is actually just towards the end of the platform roof that you can see coming up. And so we should now be stopped in about the right place. Departing from Leuchars, the starting speed limit is 55 miles per hour, and we've got just over 6¼ miles to go to the next stop, which is Cupar. I would just like to point out that braking points and braking distances on this train are being judged by the use of a brake fix specifically for the Voyager, which I got from UK Train Sim, as I felt that the default brakes on this train just weren't good enough. In fact, I could stop an HST quicker from 125 than a Voyager, which just didn't seem quite right to me. So I downloaded the brakes fix from UK Train Sim, and I'll try and remember to put that in the description of this video. The speed limit here is going up to 70 miles per hour. As we're already below 55, it won't really affect us, the speed change. I'll just continue accelerating towards 70 miles per hour, and then in a short distance the speed limit will be increasing once again to 75 miles per hour. The speed limit has now gone up to 75, so I'm going to continue accelerating up towards that, and then once we reach 75 miles per hour, I'm going to try and go between idle and low power to maintain speed. speed limit here is now going up to 85 miles per hour, and we've got just over 4 miles to go to the next stop. So I am going up to full power here to bring our speed up towards 85 miles per hour. And then once we're doing 85 once again, I'm going to go between idle and low power to try and maintain the speed. I am presently coasting, as I felt we were gaining a little bit of speed there, and as you can see we're currently bang on 85 and very gradually slowing down from that. I will apply a little bit of power in a moment if we do lose too much speed. What we're looking for now is an advance warning for a speed reduction down to 65 miles per hour, which we've reached here. So we're now 3/4 of a mile from the limit, and I'm going to brake for that speed limit at this next overbridge just coming up. I am now braking in the 30 position, which I will increase to 40 if necessary to bring our speed down, but I think this should be about right to slow us down to 65 in time. That was slowed down just slightly early there, and you can see the 65 board coming up. So the next thing we're looking out for is another speed reduction, which is down to 55 miles per hour. Once we reach that warning board, we're then around 1/4 of a mile from the speed limit itself and just over 1/2 a mile from our stop at Cupar. I am currently in a low power setting, trying to ensure that we don't lose too much speed. And in a moment we should be seeing the 55 mile per hour warning board. Now reached the 55 warning, so I am going to apply the brakes up to around the 30 position for now, and as you can see they've just jumped as we just got below 60 miles per hour, so I've just reduced the braking a little, and I'm just going to keep an eye on that and reapply the brakes a bit harder if needed. So I'm just adjusting the braking up and down here to try and bring us to a controlled stop, and you'll be able to see the platform in a moment on this left-hand curve. The stopping point here at Cupar is at the end of the platform. I have just reduced the braking as I felt we were slowing down slightly too quick there. And so I'm now going straight back up to 30, which should bring our speed off. I consider 30 a sort of light to medium brake force. Departing from Cupar, the starting speed limit is 55 miles per hour, and we've got around 5 3/4 miles to go to the next stop, which is Ladybank. As you can see, the speed limit is now going up to 60 miles per hour, and then immediately after that up to 75, so we're just going to continue accelerating in full power towards 75 miles per hour. speed limit here is now going up to 100 miles per hour, and I believe that this will in fact be the only 100 mile per hour section along the whole journey to Edinburgh. However, we won't actually be able to get up to 100 miles per hour before we have to slow down again for an 85 mile per hour speed limit. Now just passed the warning board for the upcoming 85 speed limit as we've just passed through Springfield station. So I've just applied a little bit of braking just to ensure that we were down to 85 miles per hour in time. And so we're now entering the 85 speed zone. Once again, now we're doing 85 miles per hour. I'm going to go between idle and low power to try and maintain our speed. What we're looking for along here now is a Morpeth board warning for an upcoming 60 mile per hour speed restriction. Once we have reached that Morpeth board warning, we will then be half a mile from the speed limit itself and 3/4 of a mile from Ladybank. As you can see, we have now reached the Morpeth board warning for the upcoming 60 mile per hour speed restriction, so I have applied the brakes up to 40 on the percentage gauge. As that then jumps as we get below 60 miles per hour, I'm then going to reduce the braking. In fact, you can see just how it jumped there, so that we're back at around 40 rather than up at 60. And then I'm just going to gradually reduce it as we get closer to Ladybank. You can now see the station just coming up ahead, so I'm increasing the braking a little bit, and as you can see the speed limit has now gone down to 60 miles per hour, and so that will be our starting speed limit here at Ladybank. The platform at Ladybank isn't all that long, so I am applying a little bit of harder braking now, and we do need to stop here at the end of the platform. So as we get closer to the end, I'm now reducing the braking. I'm just going to fan the brakes up and down to try and bring us to a controlled stop. Departing Ladybank, the starting speed limit is almost straight away back up to 75 miles per hour, and we've got around 5 3/4 miles to go to the next stop. Now, the next stop is spelt Markinch, and I've been given two possible pronunciations for this. One of them is Markinch, and the other one is Marking, so I'm not sure which one is correct. Please do let me know in the comments if you know. The speed limit is now going up to 85 miles per hour, and so we're going to accelerate up to that, and we should be able to get to 85 before the next speed change. Now that we're doing 85 miles per hour, I am idling the power to allow the train to coast. The speed limit will shortly be falling to 75 miles per hour, so I'm just looking for the warning for that now. And so as you can see, we've just passed the 75 warning, which is around half a mile from the speed limit. So I'm just going to brake lightly now to try and bring our speed down. So I'll go up to a maximum of 30 on the brake gauge, and as you can see, we're now down to 75 miles per hour. The speed limit is now down to 75, though it will very shortly be going back up to 85. As you can see, the speed limit has now gone back up to 85 miles per hour, and we've now got around 2.5 miles to go to Markinch. What we're looking out for next is another 75 mile per hour Morpeth board. Once we pass that, we're then 3/4 of a mile from both the upcoming speed limit and our stop. As we're now reaching 85 miles per hour, I am just reducing the power to ensure that we don't break the speed limit. I believe the power is now in idle. In fact, I'm going to apply just some light braking here, as I think we've just got this short section where we're going downhill. And now the gradient has levelled out. I have released the brakes again, and here you can see the 75 mile per hour warning. So as we enter this right hand curve here, I'm now braking up to 40 on the percent gauge, which should bring our speed down about right. I will reduce the brake force as we get closer to our stop as required. You can now see the platforms at Markinch just coming up, so I am just reducing the braking now. And also you can see that we have just passed a Morpeth board warning of an upcoming 60 mile per hour speed restriction. So here at Markinch, I'm aiming to stop at the 6 car sign, which should be coming up in a moment. In fact, the first sign you can now see here is the 3 car sign, and then you can see the black 6 car sign just coming up with the white 6 on it. So I'm aiming to stop next to that. Departing from Markinch, the starting speed limit is 75 miles per hour, though it is quickly going down to 60, and we've got just under 7.5 miles to go to the next stop, which, although is spelt Kirkcaldy, is actually pronounced Kirkcaldy. As you can see just here, the speed limit is now going back up to 75 miles per hour. And so as we travel along here, the next speed change we need to look out for is a warning for a reduction back down to 60 miles per hour. As we have now reached 75 miles per hour, I am just reducing the power momentarily, and in fact I'm going to apply the brakes now as we've just reached the 60 mile per hour warning board, so I'm going up to 30 with the brakes on the percentage gauge, as the 60 warning is only around 1/3 of a mile from the limit itself, and in fact you can see the 60 mile per hour speed board just coming up at this signal, just as we've got down to 60 miles per hour. speed limit here is now going up to 85 miles per hour. However, we're only around 1¼ miles from a 75 mile per hour speed limit, so there is no point in accelerating above 75 miles per hour at this point. I have now idled the power as we're doing 75 miles per hour, and we've just passed the 75 warning board with the speed limit coming up very quickly, and so I'm going to go between idle and low power here. One thing I would like to point out is that you will see a bit of a lack of 158s along here, which I believe you may well see in real life. And the reason for that is that I don't actually own the original Class 158, which is available on Steam. I've got the Settle to Carlisle Class 158, and I've also got the Liverpool to Manchester Class 158. And I do kind of begrudge paying 3 or 4 times for the same train, so I'm trying to avoid buying that for now, so I do apologise, but I've had to replace a number of 158s, or what was written in the timetable as 158s, with Class 170s instead. What we're looking for along here now is an upcoming 50 mile per hour Morpeth board, which is 1/3 of a mile from the speed limit itself and 3/4 of a mile from our stop. So as soon as I've seen the 50 mile per hour warning, I am then going to brake at 40 to 50% on the gauge to bring our speed down to 50 in time. Then once we're doing 50 miles per hour, I'm then going to idle the power momentarily and just coast along until we need to brake further for our stop. As you can see, we've just passed the 50 mile per hour warning board, so I have got the brakes on. It seems they don't want to go above 40 until I'm below 60 miles per hour, which I am now. So I'm just allowing the train to slow down to 50 miles per hour here. And so now we're doing just below 50. I'm just releasing the brakes and I'm going to allow the train to continue to coast. And I'm going to brake for our stop at Kirkcaldy, just past the next signal here. So now we've just passed that signal, I have applied the brakes once again, and so I'm bringing our speed down quite nicely for our stop here. Here at Kirkcaldy, I'm aiming to stop near the 6-car stop sign. Of course, this is a 5-car train, but it's the closest stop sign that I have to a 5-coach train on this route. So we're just passing the 3-car stop sign now, and I'm looking for the 6-car stop sign, which should be coming up. Yep, you can just see it on the left there now. And so if we stop around here, we should be stopped in about the right place.
Attended anywhere on the station. Any unattended articles are likely to be removed without warning.
Departing Kirkcaldy, the starting speed limit is 50 miles per hour, and we've got around 12 3/4 miles to go to the next stop, which is Inverkeithing. As you can see just here, the speed limit is going straight up to 75 miles per hour. However, we're only 3/4 of a mile away from a reduction down to 65 miles per hour. So there's no point in accelerating above 65 on this section, even if we're able to. As you can see, we're now passing the warning board for the upcoming 65 speed limit, so I'm now going to reduce the power as we're approaching 65. Although we do have an uphill section here, a short section as steep as 1 in 47, so a bit of extra power probably wouldn't hurt at this point to try and ensure that we don't lose too much speed. The gradient will be levelling in a moment, at which point I'm then going to go between idle and low power to try and maintain us around 65. The next speed change will then be a reduction to 45 miles per hour, and so we'll be looking out for the warning board for that, which is around 1/3 of a mile from the 45 speed limit. We have just passed the warning for the upcoming 45 speed limit, so I have just applied the brakes to bring our speed down. And as you can see, the speed limit has now dropped to 45 miles per hour, just 1/3 of a mile from the next speed change, which is a reduction down to 30 miles per hour. So I'm just leaving us in light braking to bring our speed down. We're currently passing through Kinghorn Station. I have slowed down for the 30 mile per hour speed limit slightly too soon, it seems, so I've just left us just slightly above for a moment, and now you can see the speed board just coming up just here on the left as we pass through this tunnel here. I'm not sure of the names of tunnels on this route, but I will try and find them out if I can. As you can see, immediately leaving this tunnel, the speed limit is going back up to 65 miles per hour, and we can accelerate to that just in a moment. As you can see, these grey boxes on the right, trackside there, now that we're passing them, I'm going straight into full power to bring our speed back up towards 65 miles per hour. I will just point out one thing that I've noticed is that we haven't had the tilt authorised light on for a while on this journey. I'm not sure if that's a bug with Train Simulator or if it's just genuinely that the tilt isn't authorised on this part of this route. In real life, I don't believe the trains would tilt along the line between Dundee and Edinburgh, just because it wouldn't actually have any bearing on what speed we could travel at, I don't think. So it may well be accurate that the tilt just isn't authorised, and so you're not seeing the train tilt on this section. Now we're doing 65 miles per hour. I'm going to go between idle and low power once again to try and maintain the speed. What I'm looking out for now is a warning for an upcoming 50 mile per hour speed restriction, which is around a third of a mile from the 50 mile per hour speed limit. As we've just passed the 50 mile per hour warning, I have now slowed down to 50 miles per hour and I'm now releasing the brakes to allow the train to coast. Once we enter the 50 mile per hour speed zone in a moment, you can see the board just coming up here. We're then a quarter of a mile from the next speed change, which is a reduction to 35 miles per hour. So I am now braking once again to bring our speed down in time for the 35 mile per hour speed zone. We're now passing through Burnt Island Station. As you can see, I've just coasted through Burnt Island Station, and very shortly the speed limit will be increasing once again back to 65 miles per hour. In fact, I believe this is the speed board you can see just coming up on the left now. It is indeed so. In a moment, just as we start rounding this left-hand curve a little more, I'm then going to increase our power to full. So I think the back of the train should be clear around now, and I'm going up to full power to accelerate back up towards 65 miles per hour. Now that we've reached 65 miles per hour, I've just idled the power to see what happens. I believe we will start losing just a tiny bit of speed, at which point I will then apply a small amount of power to ensure that that loss isn't too great. The next speed change along here should be an increase in the speed limit to 75 miles per hour, which should be just after we pass through the next station, which should be coming up shortly. We're now passing through Aberdour Station. The speed limit here has now jumped to 75 miles per hour, so I'm now going to accelerate up towards that. The next speed change will be a reduction back down to 65 miles per hour. However, this is actually listed incorrectly on this route, so we will get a 75 mile per hour Morpeth board as we travel along here, followed by a 75 mile per hour speedboard, when both should actually read 65, and indeed on the HUD, if you're driving along here, it does actually show the speed limit as 65 miles per hour. So now we've reached 75, I've just idled the power, in fact I braked slightly, as I just felt we had a chance of accelerating a little too much there. As you can see, we've now got the 75 Morpeth board, which should be reading 65, so I am now braking for the upcoming 65 mile per hour speed limit. And so as we're now down to 65, I'm just going to release the brakes and allow the train to coast a little along here. What we're looking for next is a Morpeth board warning for an upcoming 50 mile per hour speed restriction. We're now passing through Dalgety Bay Station. We now have the warning for the upcoming 50 mile per hour speed restriction, which is 3/4 of a mile from the limit and 1¼ miles from our stop at Inverkeithing. I'm going to apply the brakes for the 50 mile per hour speed limit just as we reach the next signal. As you can see, we have now reached the next signal, so I am applying the brakes up to 30, which should hopefully bring our speed down about right. In fact, we've just slowed down slightly too early there, so I'm just going to release the brakes and allow the train to continue to coast. Once we've passed the 50 mile per hour speed board, we're then very close to an upcoming 30 mile per hour speed limit, which is just 1/3 of a mile away. So I am now applying the brakes for that, just as we've reached this Morpeth board here. And our speed is gradually coming off towards 30 miles per hour. I have now just released the brakes and I'm just allowing the train to continue to coast under its own momentum. And as you can see, the platform is just coming up here and the speed limit drops to 30 miles per hour immediately entering the platform. Once again, we're aiming to stop at the 6-car sign, which is just past the buildings on this platform. We've just passed the 3-car sign now, and you can see the 6-car sign is just coming up. So if we stop around here, we should be stopped in roughly the right place.
The train now approaching platform 7 is the 0825 cross-country service to Edinburgh. This
Departing from Inverkeithing, the starting speed limit is 30 miles per hour, and we've got just under 12 miles to go to the next stop, which is Haymarket. As we enter this right-hand curve here, the speed limit will be going up to 50 miles per hour, and we're about to start an uphill climb, initially on a gradient of 1 in 46, though that will be shallowing as we enter the tunnel just ahead. I have just reduced the power momentarily, and now we can accelerate just as we've reached the end of this right curve here, up towards the 60 mile per hour speed limit. Sorry, correction, 50 mile per hour speed limit. The gradient has now shallowed to 1 in 79, and as we approach 50 miles per hour, I'm then going to idle the power and allow the train to coast and slow down a little. We've got a warning board just coming up here now for an upcoming 40 mile per hour speed limit, which is a quarter of the mile from the limit itself. So I have just applied very, very light braking now to bring our speed down a little more. And we'll see the 40 mile per hour speed board coming up in a moment as we round this left-hand curve. Just after the 40 mile per hour speed zone, the speed limit will then be going back up to 60 miles per hour. So as you can see, we've entered the 40 zone now, and I've just applied a little bit of power to try and ensure we don't lose too much speed on this uphill section. And as you can see, we're now passing the 60 mile per hour speed board, so we can accelerate around the end of this left-hand curve here. I'm now going into full power to bring us up towards 60, though there will soon be another speed reduction down to 50 miles per hour once again as we approach the 4th bridge. As we enter this tunnel here, you can see that we've now got a Morpeth board warning us of the upcoming 50 mile per hour speed restriction. Obviously we're currently going below 50, so we don't need to do a lot, but we can continue to accelerate for a moment. Just the other side of this tunnel, we will then be passing through a station which is North Queensferry, and just at the end of the platform there, the speed limit will then be dropping to 50 miles per hour. So I'm now idling the power, and I'm just going to apply some light braking to ensure that we've slowed down in time. As you can see, we have now entered the 50 mile per hour speed zone, and we're now entering the 4th bridge. The name of the bridge doesn't come from its number, but it's actually because we are crossing what is known as the Firth of the Forth. We have just slowed down slightly too much, so I've just applied a little bit of power here to bring our speed back up towards the 50 mile per hour speed limit. So the total length of the 4th bridge is 8,296 feet, which I believe is around 1.5 to 1 3/4 miles. The maximum height of the bridge is 330 feet, and the longest span is 1,710 feet. It was constructed between 1882 and 1890 and was opened on the 4th of March 1890. And I would say it's probably one of the most recognisable landmarks in all of Scotland. At the end of the bridge just coming up, the speed limit will be going up to 60 miles per hour just before we pass through another station, which is Dalmenay. Or it could be pronounced Dalmeny, actually I'm not entirely certain. As you can see, we're now entering the 60 mile per hour speed zone. And so I'm going to accelerate to that in a moment, just as we're around halfway through the platform here. I'm now going into full power to bring us up towards 60 miles per hour. Once we reach 60 miles per hour, I'm then going to go between idle and low power to try and maintain us at that speed. Apologies for the bit of severe stutter just there. It does sometimes happen when I'm recording. Hopefully when I get a new computer later this year this will stop happening and the videos produced will be a lot smoother. As you can see, the speed limit is now going up to 90 miles per hour. And I'm going to accelerate towards that just here at the end of the two walls that we were just going through. Although it's not too long now until the speed limit falls again to 75 miles per hour. And so when we see the 75 mile per hour warning board, that is around 1/3 of a mile from the speed limit itself. We have just passed the 75 mile per hour warning board, so I am now braking lightly just to ensure that we don't go above 75. There's no point at this point because we need to slow down for this limit. As you can see, we have now entered the 75 mile per hour speed zone, although it's quickly gone back up to 90 almost straight away. So I'm now releasing the brakes and I'm going to allow the train to start to coast up towards the speed limit as we're going downhill on a gradient of between 1 in 76 and 1 in 57. As you can see, the train is coasting up in speed towards 90 miles per hour quite nicely now. I will use the brakes as we reach 90 if necessary to control the speed. I have just applied some very light braking as we did reach 90 and I wanted to ensure that we didn't go above that speed. We will shortly be coming up on South Gyle Station, and at this point the gradient will be levelling out and so we can just coast along. There will then be another 75 mile per hour speed warning just after South Gyle Station. The gradient at this point has now levelled off and I'm just going to allow the train to coast for a moment now, as I don't feel there's much point in trying to maintain 90 when we've got to very shortly slow down for a 75 speed limit. In fact, you've just seen that we've just passed the 75 warning board there. So I am now applying some light braking just to try and ensure that I bring our speed down in time. And so we've just slowed down to 75 and as you can see we've now entered the 75 mile per hour speed zone. Just after we've rounded this curve, we're then going to join the main line from Edinburgh to Glasgow Queen Street. which is just coming in from the right. Of course, I have covered the journey from Glasgow Queen Street to Edinburgh in a different video in a Class 170. And just at this point, we've just passed another 90 mph speed board, so the speed limit has gone back up to that, and so I've gone into full power to accelerate back up towards 90. Going to continue to accelerate towards 90 mph, and as soon as we've reached it, I'm going to idle the power and then start applying the brakes, because there will be an upcoming 50 mph speed restriction and then a 35 restriction just before we enter Haymarket station. But if I brake at the point where we get the warning for the 50 mph speed restriction, it's actually too late and we can't slow down in time. So now that we've pretty much reached 90 mph, I've now idled the power, and I'm now going to start applying the brakes to try and ensure that I bring our speed down in time. So I've just gone up to the 40, and as you can see, we've just passed the 50 warning, so I'm hoping that I've applied the brakes in time to slow down for that 50 limit. I know that I did find this one quite difficult to judge. We are now passing Haymarket Depot on the left. So in a moment, just as we get below 60, as you can see, the brakes have just kicked in with much more force, and we slowed down to 50 perfectly for the 50 mph speed limit there. And the speed limit is dropping straight down to 35 in a moment, so I've just allowed the train to continue to brake to slow to 35. As it happens, there is a bit of leeway in the timetable here, and we are going to arrive early into Haymarket station anyway. So although we've slowed down there slightly too early for the 35 limit, it's really not a problem. And I'm just going to allow the train to coast along at 35 mph momentarily. And then here at Haymarket station, I'm aiming to stop at the sign that says all for all trains, which is just at the end of the roof on the left. Departing from Haymarket, the starting speed limit is 35 mph, and we've got just under 1¼ miles to go to our next and final stop, which is Edinburgh Waverley. As we enter Haymarket Tunnel here, I'm going to accelerate up to the 35 mph speed limit, and then I'm just going to idle the power and allow the train to coast, as shortly after leaving this tunnel the speed limit will then be dropping to 20 mph. Unfortunately, I did make a slight mistake there, and we did just creep slightly above 35 mph. I have immediately corrected that, and I've just applied a little bit of braking just to ensure that we're now below 35. As soon as we reach the end of the tunnel here, I'm then going to apply the brakes, which I'm going to do now, just to slow us down in time for the upcoming 20 mph speed limit. So as you can see, I've gone up to 30 on the brake gauge, and now I'm reducing down to 20, just to bring us to slow down gently. And now I've just had to increase the braking slightly. As you can see, the 20 mph speed board is there, and so we've just now entered the 20 mph speed zone. So we're doing around 17 to 18 miles per hour. I'm just going to give us a tiny boost of power to bring that back up towards 20, and then we can just coast along here into Edinburgh Waverley station. So as you can see, or probably heard, that the power is now idle, and so I won't need to use any more power on the way into Edinburgh. It does look like for some reason we potentially have a red signal just ahead, which I wasn't expecting. It's just changed to a single yellow aspect now, so I'll just release the brakes. And now I'll bring us back up towards 20 once again. There are no speed changes between here and the platform at Edinburgh. So as we enter this platform here, we're going to stop at the first half of the platform, which actually has a completely different number to the second half. And in fact, you can see a red signal just ahead of us, so I'm going to be aiming to stop just in front of that red signal there. As you can see, there is a sign just here which says all, which means that all trains should stop at that sign. And so we're now stopped in about the right place. Thank you very, very much for watching. I really do hope that you've enjoyed this video. If you have, then please don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. Also, please don't forget that you can find me on Facebook, the link of which is in the description of this video. And also, if you really do appreciate the work that I do and would like to support me financially towards the cost of new DLC, and ultimately help me towards the cost of a new computer, which will help me to produce a wider range of videos in higher quality, then please see my Patreon page, the link of which is in the description of this video. Once again, thank you for watching.